I am one of the unlucky few who struggles to keep normal earbuds securely in my ears. For that reason, 3 years ago, I purchased the Beats Fit Pros in hopes that their wingtip design would help make them more stable in my ears. They worked like a charm and have been my daily driver ever since. Now, Sony has released a competitor, the LinkBuds Fit. I've been testing them out for about a week and want to do a comparison between my first impressions of the Sonys and my long-term impressions of the Beats. My evaluation criteria will include the following categories. For each one, I'll explain the argument for each headphone and let you know where I believe they fall. Fair warning though, this is a very close matchup. If you'd like to purchase either one of these headphones for yourself, you can find links down in the video description. With that, let's jump into the design and appearance. These are both good-looking earbuds. They're simple and clean. The Beats feature a logo on the buds as well as the case, whereas the Sonys are more clean and minimalistic. Depending on your opinions on branding, and on the Beats brand specifically, this may sway you strongly one way or the other. Personally, I will always opt for fewer brands and labels on my products. However, I do like what Beats has done to make the logos blend in more on certain colors, like the gray version I have. I don't particularly love the bright red Beats logo. In addition to this gray, the Beats come in a black, white, and purple, plus a slew of limited edition colors, including some that are done in natural skin tones in collaboration with Kim Kardashian. If every color that exists now existed back when I originally purchased these in 2021, I probably would have grabbed the blue ones instead of the gray, though I do still love the gray color. Sony, on the other hand, offers black, white, purple, and green options. They also do let you customize your pair with a few additional colors, though it'll cost you extra. I will be honest when I say that when the Sonys first arrived, I felt a bit deceived. The wingtip is just a soft rubber piece, the same material as the ear tip, which is removable and just sort of popped onto the outside of the earbud. Online, it looks like it's more of an integrated part of the earbud itself, more like how the Beats are. I think that this could have been more clearly shown in the product photography, since even now, looking back, I can't clearly see this distinction in really any of the photos on the website. Even though I was initially upset about what felt a bit like a bait and switch, I found myself unexpectedly liking the appearance and not really minding the difference in the end. From a shape and appearance perspective, the Sonys are very round, shaped a bit like a bean with a wingtip added to the top. The Beats feature more sharp edges, with the wingtip being a defining feature rather than seeming more like an add-on. When they're in my ears, I personally prefer the look of the Sonys. However, the wingtip shape of the Beats is pretty iconic. It's really easy to spot if you see someone wearing these around town or around the airport or whatever it may be. It's going to be much harder to identify these Sonys since they look a lot more like many other similar headphones out today. Even though I personally prefer the look of the Sonys, I think that this one is probably too close to call and would probably split the audience about 50-50 in terms of which appearance is better. As a result, I'm going to call the design and appearance a toss-up. In my previous video reviewing the Beats Fit Pro, link found in the description, I talk about how the wingtip design will feel strange at first. Many people simply won't be happy with this little bit of rubber poking up into a part of your ear that usually isn't touched by anything. However, I describe this as similar to the first time you wear flip-flop sandals with that little bit that goes between your toes. This similarly feels really strange at first, but yet millions of people are out there walking around in sandals like this without thinking twice. Once I'd used the Beats for about a month or so, the wingtip was barely noticeable, even when wearing them for long periods of time. All that being said, when compared to the Sonys, the wingtip on the Beats is much more stiff and considerably longer. You really feel it and you do know that it is there. By contrast, the wingtip on the Sonys is smaller, softer, and more flexible. It's much more gentle and harder to notice. The ear tip is also slightly thinner and more flexible. As a result of these differences, there likely won't be as much of an adjustment period getting used to the Sony earbuds. Over the last 3 years, I have loved the Beats Fit Pros and still do appreciate their fit. However, I find that the Sonys are more comfortable while still being just as effective at staying in my ear. I have yet to have them fall out a single time, and they have required minimal readjustment once they're in place. The caveat here is that this type of fit is incredibly personal and dependent on the individual shape of your ears. When I wear the Beats, the wingtip does the bulk of the heavy lifting to keep it in place. When I wear the Sonys, the ear tip and the bean shape fit more naturally, so the wingtip winds up providing just a bit more friction and resistance, but not being solely responsible for keeping the headphones in place. But please remember, this is a sample size of 1. My wife, on the other hand, can't wear either of these based on the shape of her ears. Her ears are really small, and the wingtips can't fit in where they belong. So in the end, nothing's gonna be better for you than trying to get one of these with a hands-on experience and trying them for yourself. Even though I've loved my Beats for years, my point here goes to Sony for it being better for me, plus softer and more flexible to hopefully avoid that month-long adjustment period for everyone else. The cases for these earbuds look very different, but are pretty evenly matched. The Beats case has a much larger footprint and makes me think of a clamshell in terms of its shape and design. It uses a single plastic material that's color matched to the headphones that you select. The hinge on the Beats case springs open, only closing when you get it close enough to the magnet. I've had some issues personally with the hinge on my Beats case, being squeaky and feeling a bit cheap, but some commenters on my review said that theirs was just fine, so it honestly may just be a one-off with my case in particular. The Sony case is much smaller but stands taller, making it stick out more if you carry it around in a pocket. The design and dimensions are a bit reminiscent of a ring box. Sony went with 2 different materials, a faux marble look on top and a soft touch plastic on the bottom. The hinge has a midpoint where it switches between springing open and absolutely slamming shut. Both cases charge via USB-C, and neither one has wireless charging. Unless you feel really strongly about one size or one material, they're basically the same, so it's a toss-up for me. Audio quality is next, and for many people, this may be the only one of these categories that you truly care about. And for your answer, it's Sony. The Sony sound way better. I'm actually obsessed with how good they sound. And on top of that, I'm super impressed with their EQ adjustments, specifically a feature that they offer in their app called Find Your Equalizer. It allows you to switch between several predefined EQs while music plays in the background. Once you select your favorite, it then lets you fine-tune it by giving you additional options that are similar to your first selection. Essentially, it's taking the intimidation factor out of an EQ slider situation and just making it simple and accessible for you to find your ideal sound. It's a bit like you go to the eye doctor and they say, is this one better or is this one better? But for sound in your ears, it's really cool. My result looked like this and was excellent for my ears and has resulted in an incredible listening experience. Even in its standard configuration, the earbuds sound good, but when utilizing a personalized EQ, it's perfection. Overall, I would describe the Sonys as being well-balanced and capable of a surprising amount of bass. I don't notice any real distortion or issues with clear vocals, even at high volumes. It's an impressive display. Now, before you go running out to buy a pair of Sonys, please know that the Beats also sound quite good. They use the same chip as the first generation AirPods Pros and have similar sound with just a bit more bass to go with the Beats branding. I would never listen to the Beats and insist that they sound bad. The Sonys just sound better. Noise cancellation, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. Starting with Sony, the noise cancellation is fine. It's functional, it works. But just like before, the alternative, in this case the Beats, are simply better. Similar to the original AirPods Pros, the active noise cancellation on the Beats is incredibly strong. It does an excellent job blocking out noise, it never wavers, and it's just plain good. That being said, it's not quite as good as the newer second generation AirPods Pros, which have the best noise cancellation I've ever experienced. If you want a full breakdown and comparison of noise cancellation on Apple headphones specifically, you can find that video linked down below. For Sony, the ANC blocks out most sounds well, but it's simply not as strong as what Beats has to offer, plus it's got 2 specific issues that I ran into. First, No matter what type of ANC you're dealing with, no matter what type of headphones, you'll get some sort of sound that gets through into your ears. In my case, I tested both of these with some background drone of a busy highway. The sounds that ultimately made it through to my ears on the Sonys were more high-pitched and therefore just more unpleasant to hear. Thankfully, if your music is loud enough, you can't really hear it, so it's not a huge issue. But if you ever sit using ANC with just silence, just to kind of focus, you may notice a difference and the sound may bother some folks that have sensitive ears. The other issue is that the ANC on the Sonys occasionally has little blips. It sort of has to reset itself. What you wind up experiencing is a temporary moment of hearing lots of outside noise, followed by sort of a resettling back to quiet. This could very well improve with future firmware updates. Keep in mind, these are brand new, but right now it's very noticeable while testing. I'm planning to do a full review in the coming months and I'll report back if anything changes or improves, but for right now, point here for the Beats in the noise cancellation category. For other features, we have a pretty big split. The easy way to understand it is that Beats are going to win for most Apple users and Sony is going to win for most everyone else. Starting with the Beats, in case you don't know, Apple owns Beats, so all of the magic that Apple AirPods are capable of translates over to the Beats Fit Pros as well. That includes seamless pairing to your Apple devices, as well as automatic device switching. It's got spatial audio, Find My, and direct control over things like ANC directly in your iOS and your macOS, rather than having a separate dedicated app. For Sony, none of these magic features exist, which makes it a tough sell for Apple users. However, that doesn't mean that Sony doesn't have a lot to offer. In fact, the only way that I can describe their sort of additional features is to say that they are doing the most. Their Sound Connect app is not the most intuitive I've ever used, but boy, is there a lot packed into it. Just to name a few, there's listening modes to allow your headphones to make it sound like your music is being played in the background as if you're at a coffee shop. You can have your noise cancellation automatically adjust based on specific locations and activities like running. You can enable an autoplay to automatically play when you put your earbuds in or automatically play when you start running or when you get to the gym. Seriously, this is just to name a few of the interesting features that Sony has in their app. To be honest, most of these features I just discussed, though, are kind of in this overkill category for me. Maybe I'm a bit old school in this sense, but I don't want my phone and my headphones to recognize patterns in my noise cancellation usage and then try to automatically adjust what it thinks that I want. Inevitably, when you use something like that, it becomes a battle against the technology when it behaves incorrectly. That's going to stand out far more in my mind than it will as a benefit when it happens to do it successfully. For me, I'll pass on most of those features. But all right, back to the topic at hand. In terms of functionality that is not software dependent, it's a bit of a toss-up. First, neither one has a particularly strong microphone. Here is a sample.
The Beats sound okay, certainly not great with no background noise. And they do a pretty bad job of voice isolation when background noise is present. The Sonys sound equally mediocre with no background noise. They do, however, do a better job of voice isolation when testing with background noise.
For controls, the Beats have a button on the side of them that clicks when you press it. It's got pretty conventional controls from there. 1 click to play pause, 2 clicks to skip the track, 3 clicks to go back. You can press and hold it to change your ANC mode, or you can adjust this so that a press and hold engages Siri instead through a simple settings change. Sony, on the other hand, doesn't have a physical button. It relies on tapping. You can either tap the headphone itself, or using a feature that they call wide area tap, you can actually just tap directly on your skull around your ear, which is totally weird, but it actually works fairly well. Tap effects vary depending on which ear you're tapping. On the right, 2 taps will play pause, 3 taps will skip track. On the left, 2 taps will change your ANC setting. Then you can do kind of what they call a persistent tap, I believe, which is 5 or more to change volume. So the right side, if you just keep tapping, will increase the volume, and the left side, if you just keep tapping, will decrease the volume. It's very weird to just sit there and tap away on your face to increase the volume, But since the Beats have no way to adjust volume, I guess it's welcome to at least have some way to do it. Now, Sony does also let you adjust these tap functions in their app. However, it only lets you use sort of predefined combinations. So for example, by default, there's no way to go back a track. You can add it, but if you add it to the right side, you're going to lose play pause. If you add it to the left side, you're going to lose your ANC controls. So it's definitely imperfect. Overall, these are both pretty full-featured headphones. For Apple users, you'll probably love the simplicity and direct integration of the Beats. For an Android user, you'll probably appreciate the immense amount of control that Sony offers. Neither one is perfect, and I truly believe that your preference will more likely than not be guided by your operating system. From a durability perspective, both headphones are IPX4 rated, offering sweat and basic water resistance on the earbuds, and to the best of my knowledge, no real water protections on the cases themselves. Beyond this point, I have a bit of an unfair comparison on my hands, as I've been daily driving the Beats for 3 years, and have honestly beaten them up quite a bit. The Sonys have only been in my possession for about a week, so I'll have to speculate about how I think they'll hold up under similar conditions. First, how have the Beats held up? Honestly, for lack of a better term, they're kind of beat. The case is scratched and scuffed. One of the buds looks like part of the finish has been almost somewhat melted, which is a little bit alarming. When cleaning one of the ear tips a few months ago, a mesh piece fell out, which has impacted the sound performance in that ear and left nothing to prevent debris from getting into the internals. And most recently, literally while comparing the wingtips for this video, one of my wingtips actually split and is now holding on by just a thread. When you hear all of that one after another, it sounds pretty damning for durability, but I think that it depends on your perspective. I'd ask you to consider how long a pair of earbuds should last. I'm sure some of you will think that only 3 years of use is ridiculous. Others may think that it's totally reasonable. I am not here to tell you what to think. I will say though that these have had a heck of a 3 years. They were used probably 5 to 6 days out of the average week. They went on many flights and travel adventures. It was a lot. They're also technically still functional, even if they are a bit worse for wear. When thinking about comparability, a few things stand out. The material on the Sonys is much softer and thinner. As a result, I don't think it's going to split from regular use like the Beats Wing did, but they definitely could tear if you pulled too hard, so definitely be careful when you're removing them for cleaning. On the bright side, the wingtips on the Sonys are replaceable directly from Sony for just $10. For the Beats, the wingtips are available on eBay, which claim to be authentic, but I couldn't find anywhere else, including from Beats and Apple directly, that offered them for sale. The ear tips for both of them are fairly standard. Neither manufacturer seems to offer replacement ear tips for sale directly, but many third-party manufacturers offer ones that should be compatible. Overall, I once again put this one as a toss-up. My Beats still work, but are showing their age, and the longevity of the Sonys is pretty unknown at this point. What I do believe strongly is that replacement parts should be more accessible across the board here. It should be simple to get official replacement ear tips, wings, buds, cases, everything directly from the manufacturer. For battery, Sony offers 5.5 hours with ANC on and 8 hours with it off. The smaller case that they have offers an additional 15.5 hours as well. Beats, on the other hand, only advertises their ANC off number, which is 6 hours, which we can assume means about 4 hours with it on, somewhere in that ballpark. I can't say I've ever officially timed it over the years, but when it does get low, there is a quick charge capability that gets you 1 hour of playback for just 5 minutes of charge. So anytime they've gotten low, I've just given my ears a break, thrown them in the case for a few minutes, and then they're good to go. So it's never become much of an issue. The larger case that Beats has gets you an additional 18 hours of charge. So in total, between earbuds and case, both of these are very similar, right around 24 hours total. Sony gives you a bit more power in the buds themselves, and Beats gives you a bit more reserve power in the case. I'd personally give Sony a slight edge, as I'd rather have a larger battery in the earbuds than in the case, But it doesn't really make too much of a difference, and once again, I'd say it's more or less a toss-up. Finally, we have price. The MSRP for both of these headphones is $200. As the Beats have been around for quite a while, you'll regularly find these discounted down to a much lower price. Even though the Sonys have only been out for about a month, they've already gotten a $20 discount, so pricing, I'd say, is very competitive between the two. Now, I told you at the beginning that this was going to be a very tight race. If you tally up the results, in most cases, you're probably going to wind up with Sony taking the head-to-head. However, if you're an Apple user specifically, those features on the Beats might be enough to overcome everything else. In the end, my summary is that the Sonys sound better, fit better, and offer more flexibility with their compatibility and their settings. The Beats have superior noise cancellation and are fantastic with Apple devices. Neither one is a bad choice, and thankfully, they're the same price. So now it's your turn. Which ones are you gonna buy? Sony? Beats? Let me know down in the comments. If you'd like to see my full Beats review, you can find that linked in the video description. I'll try to remember to link the Sony review in a few months once it's complete as well. Don't forget, there are affiliate links in the video description if you decide to buy either one. And there's also a button down there that says subscribe and means a lot to say thank you for all of the work needed to get all these details together to help you guys make your purchasing decision. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.